Hi there, you are watching Aha Moments with Ron Barnett, the show where we talk about basic things that we all deal with every day. But we add maybe a little bit of insight, and hopefully you have the light bulb go off above your head, and you have what I like to call an aha moment where you say, I've never thought about it like that before. Today we're going to talk about 4 questions that you and I can ask ourselves that will lead us to success. Now, we have to understand the definition of success. Success really means achieving a goal. It means crossing the goal line. It means that you and I are getting out of life what we want. Now, if you're struggling with understanding what you want out of life, we did a video called 5 Steps to Realizing Your Lifelong Dreams. Go to YouTube, put in Aha Moments with Ron Barnett and watch that video. And hopefully that'll help you to understand, to figure out what you want. But once you've figured out what you want, you've got to go after it. And hopefully you're beginning to see the fruit of your labor. Now, you and I both know that success is not permanent. It's not even a destination, but it's not a permanent situation. It has to be maintained. And once you get that goal, once you achieve that accomplishment, then you need to move on to the next one. But I believe there are 4 questions that we can ask ourselves, 4 questions that will help us clarify how to get success. Now, I must explain to you, I grew up around people who like acting. And one of the things that actors do when they have a line in a play or a line in a movie or whatever, is they will read that line and they will emphasize different words in that line to change the meaning of that particular line. And so really the 4 questions that we're going to ask is the same question asked emphasizing 4 different words. And hopefully as we go along, it'll make a lot more sense. The question is, what are you doing? Now, my mother used to ask me, what do you think you're doing? All right. I don't know if your mother ever asked you that question. And really, it was less about wanting to know my thought process on what I was actually accomplishing or trying to achieve, as it was asking me if it was a good idea. That's not the question. The question is, what are you doing? All right. So we're going to take that question and we're going to look at each one of those words. And hopefully, as we ask ourselves these 4 questions, we will clarify what it is we want and how to get to where we're going. So let's try it. Question number 1 is, what are you doing? If you and I are going to be successful, if you and I are going to achieve our goals, we have to have goals. We have to have something that motivates us. We have to have a what. We have to wake up in the morning with a purpose, with a design. And if we do that, then we will tend to get what we want. But you and I both know that we are tempted to float through life, to just take what life hands us. But I find that when we do that, we are less happy because we have nothing to look forward to. You and I, as people, need something to look forward to. We need a what. And so the question is, what are you doing? What is it that makes you happy? What is it that you want to achieve? What experience do you want to have? What place do you want to go? And so the question is, what are you doing? Now, I find that little whats can divert us from big whats. The big what in our life can be diverted by little bitty whats that come along. I love baseball. Those of you that know me know I'm a big baseball fan. And in baseball, you keep track of everything. You keep track of hits, runs batted in. You keep track of home runs. You keep track of all this stuff. If you're a pitcher, you keep track of balls and strikes. You keep track of ERA. You keep track of all these little statistics. And it can be, as a baseball player, it can be diverting you to look at these little statistics because you want your slugging percentage to go up. You want your numbers to go up. But the goal of baseball is not to produce numbers. The goal of baseball is to win ball games. Now, if your pitching staff has got a lower ERA, if your hitters got higher batting averages, then you are going to be more likely to win games. But if we focus on the little whats, we miss the big what, which is winning games to win championships so that you can be successful and say, we are the champions, right? But don't let the little whats in your life, those little accomplishments, divert you from the big accomplishment. There's a book out there called Good or Great. And the author talks about the fact that to be great, sometimes you have to sacrifice good, because good is the enemy of great. And you and I want to be great. We are called by God to do great things. We're not called to be average. We're called to be above average in some area in our life. And so to be great, we have to have big what, a what that makes us excited, a what that gets us out of bed in the morning. And so if we divert ourselves to the little whats, to the little goals that will sometimes be good, but will never accomplish great. I had a friend of mine years ago who was we were living in a part of Ohio that was very well off. The houses were expensive. We were living in this place. Everybody had a great job. And I remember my friend asking me one day, he said, Ron, I don't understand something. He said, I'm making more money than Dad ever thought about making. I'm making more money than I've ever made in my entire life. I live in a nicer house than I grew up in. I'm driving a nicer car. My wife doesn't have to work because I make enough money. She's able to stay home with the kids, which makes her happy. I've got every gadget you can imagine. I've got every new appliance, new TV, new gaming system for the kids. And we are doing more and experiencing more. I've been to more places than my family ever thought about going to. But he looked me in the eye and he said, why am I not happy? And the reason he wasn't happy was he had gotten diverted on the little whats and he missed the big what. What makes you happy? What will satisfy you in the end? So you need to know, what are you doing? Question one, what are you doing? All right. Now, question two is, what are you doing? The word are is in the present tense. That means we're not worried about what you were doing, what you thought about doing, what you were planning on doing, what you would like to do, what you're hoping to do. The question is, what are you doing? What are you doing in the present tense that leads you to success, leads you to getting whatever it is you want, leads you to experiencing the life you want to lead? What are you doing? Not what did you do, not what will you do, but what are you doing? There is a power in the present tense. There is a power in knowing right this minute that I am doing what I am called to do. While I'm making this video, I am feeling like I am doing what I've been called to do. I told people a long time ago, I am not a extremely intelligent guy. I'm not necessarily the best good-looking guy. I'm not the wealthiest guy, but I have one skill. I have one superpower, and that one superpower is to speak to people where they are and inspire them and instruct them, maybe even make them laugh. That's my only superpower. So I can talk to a group of people and I can make them laugh. I can talk to a group of people and I can inspire them. I can talk to a group of people and educate them. That's my one superpower. And by making these videos, not only am I accomplishing my what, but I'm doing it right now. I'm not waiting for the future to hope one of these days something happens. I'm taking the bull by the horns right now. There is a power in right now. And so you and I have to be about not only what we're doing, but what are you doing? There are people who are involved in 12-step programs. And the 12-step programs say, don't worry about the past. You can't change that. Don't even worry about the future. Just make the next right move right now. I've known people that were in Alcoholics Anonymous, and they said, I'm not going to drink for the next minute. I'm not going to drink for the next hour. I'm not going to drink for the next day. And what do? They take it day by day, moment by moment. They live in right now. What am I doing right now? And if you and I are chasing our what, but what are you doing right this minute? And if each minute of our lives is spent pursuing that thing we want, it won't be that much longer that we actually begin to see the fruit of our labor. And each day, spending our day, that moment, that day, doing the what, chasing it, then it's amazing how quickly that's going to happen. Question number 3, as you may have already figured out, is what are you doing? I think it's interesting that you and I are tempted, if we're not careful, to spend a lot of time worried about what other people are doing. Social media is all about what are other people doing. The news is about what other people are doing. Talk radio, television is about what other people are doing. But if you and I are going to be successful, we can't worry about what other people are doing. We can't focus on what other people are doing. What are you doing? We have a tendency, if we're not careful, to compare ourselves to other people. And I hope you've never fallen in the trap of comparison, because comparison leads to one of two problems. You will either compare yourself to somebody who is ahead of you in the game, somebody who is higher up, somebody who's better at whatever you want to do. And if you compare yourself continually to people who are better than you are, farther along than you are, you will get a bad sense of yourself, because you will say, I must be a failure, because look where they are and look where I am. And so, or you will have a tendency to compare yourself to people who are behind you, people who are not quite where you are, people who are not as successful as you are. And you will get a bad idea of yourself, because you will say, look at them and look at me. I must be doing wonderfully, because look, I'm not them. The only person you can compare yourself to is you, your former self. And are you making progress in that goal? Are you doing the things that you need to do? Now, there also is one more tendency when we talk about looking at other people. There is what I like to call the person who is waiting for something to happen. And they're waiting for somebody else to come alongside them. The Disney princess catastrophe, where if you watch that, and ladies, I'm not picking on you, but if you watch Disney movies, you will see a Disney princess who's waiting for something to happen. Sleeping Beauty is laying there asleep, waiting for Prince Charming to come kiss her. Cinderella is waiting for the fairy godmother to come alongside her so she can go to the ball. And while those are all wonderful stories and we love them and we watch them and we sing the little Disney songs and those are great, guess what? They give us a false sense of how things really are. I can't wait for somebody else to come alongside me to help me to do what I've got to do. Now, I totally believe in sitting around waiting for somebody else to do it. I've got a long weight on my hands, and I've got an unproductive weight on my hands. I can't wait for other people to do that. The only person that you can change is you, and the only time you can change is now. So what are you doing? What are you doing to make it happen? No one's going to be more excited about that what in your life than you are. No one should be more involved in the what in your life than you are. And if you're not doing something about it, then nobody else is going to. If you're not excited, nobody else is going to be excited. So what are you doing? And if you are involved, if you are making something happen, if you are pursuing it, you might get other people excited about it. They might jump in and help you. But if you're not excited, if you're not taking the bull by the horns, if you're not running with the ball, why would you expect anybody else to? And so we've got to be very careful that we're the people who are in charge of our own destiny, our own fate. And finally, the last question is, what are you doing? Not what were you doing or what even you plan to do, but what are you doing? There is the importance of action. Doing means action. We've got to be about something. We can't just sit and wait for it to happen. We can't just sit around and hope that things will turn out well. What are you doing? My father was not always the most patient person, especially when we were driving down the road. And he would get stuck behind people in traffic. And he would get frustrated. And he would say, do something, even if it's wrong. See, if we are doing something, we may make mistakes. We may fall short. But even in those errors, even in those mistakes, we can see positive things happen. And we can make good out of what really we ended up starting out as bad because we did the wrong thing. But do something, even if it's wrong. Make a mistake, because at least when you're making mistakes, you're doing something. And you may learn from that mistake. Hopefully you do. But if you're doing something, you've got to be a part of the answer to the solution. Now, what I find interesting is in the Bible, God had people doing some extraordinary, exciting things. One of my favorite stories in the Bible is the feeding of the 5,000. And Jesus takes 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish and feeds basically 15,000 people with it. And you think, I could never do that. I know I could never do that. But you know what I find interesting about Scripture? Every time God does something really, really exciting, he involves mortal, simple, ordinary people in the process. Jesus turns to his disciples and he says, put the people in groups of 50 and 100. Now, I don't know if you've ever worked with church people before, but if you tell them to do something, the first question they're going to ask you is, well, why? Why are we doing this? And of course, the disciples said, well, we're going to have lunch. We're getting ready to feed you. Now, they knew that they didn't have enough to even to feed the disciples, and yet they obeyed what God told them to do, what Jesus told them to do, because Jesus gave them something simple. Now, can they feed 5,000 people? No. But can they put people in groups of 50 and 100? Yes. And when you and I do what we can do, then God will do what he's going to do and turn what we couldn't do into the miraculous and make things happen. One of the other ones is the children of Israel crossing the Dead Sea, or crossing the Red Sea. Children of Israel are looking at the Red Sea in front of them. They're looking at the armies of the Egyptians behind them. And they're like, what do we do now? And God says to Moses, he says, take that stick and wave it over the water. Now, is that going to change anything? No. He says, put that stick right down in the water. But when he did, God moved the water. Not only did God move the water, my favorite part of that story is that God not only sent a wind to dry the muddy bottom of the sea, so they walked across on dry land. So God may be a part of your life, and God may be a part of your success. But sometimes he's waiting to see what you're going to do. Are you obeying what he told you to do? My mother had a saying years ago. She said, God's not going to dust your tables. Meaning God is going to do his part, but sometimes God is waiting for you to do your part. And when you do your part, God will come alongside you and bring you success. So the 4 questions are very, very simple. And it's basically the same question over 4 times. Number 1, what are you doing? Know your what. What are you doing? Deal with the present. What are you doing? Be involved. And finally, what are you doing? Do something. And it requires action. Well, hopefully you've had an aha moment. Hopefully you're ready to have success. Hopefully you will understand the 4 questions and go out and do great things. I look forward to hearing from you. If you like what we're doing and you want to make a comment, not only on Facebook or on YouTube, by all means, go ahead. And that way we'll know, hey, maybe we're having success. My name is Ron Barnett, and I appreciate